there was actually bacon left the second time around, which has never happened in this house. 12, well, okay, we had guys cooking it, so we probably brought up 11.5 pounds of bacon, and the other half got tested during the production. So yeah, you guys went through, filled up your customary 12 pounds of bacon. 60 eggs? 66 eggs. And 6 pizzas. So there, you got your 666. So, how were the pizzas anyway? You guys like that? It was fun, different change. Okay, good. Not a lot of views and headlines. Got a couple things I just want to share for a minute. After today, we got 3 more breakfasts. We got Dr. Fred talking next month. Yeah, looking forward to that. Bring friends, and then Pastor Ozzy is coming in April, and then Jake is actually closing us out in May. Yeah, it's a steak and eggs breakfast, so no pressure. So bring some meat, guys. Bring some meat, Jake. But, I've been thinking about something lately, and just wanted to share it with you guys a little bit of a story. It's actually some of the stuff that Dr. Fred's been sharing at this leadership thing we've been going to on Monday nights. It's been really, really good. So back in 2013, I felt I needed to challenge myself a little bit. Had hit my 50s, you know. I didn't really freak out about it. I mean, I'm too shallow for it to really affect me. But I decided I needed to do something. So Doug Lattery had done a couple of these warrior dashes. So that sounds kind of cool. So I signed up for my first and then second, because, you know, it's not like I'm obsessive about it. But so I decided that in 2013 I signed up so that in 2014 I was going to do 2 of these obstacle course races. So it's like, okay, I already paid money, so I better get ready for this thing. So I worked out like crazy, got into a whole bunch of different exercise routines. I did the first one, and I think it was May, like 6 of us that did it, and we did another one in September. They were an absolute blast, absolutely loved them. So in 2014 we got our medals, and I mean it took a lot of work, it really worked for it, it was a good payoff. And then wanted to do them in 2015, and signed up for one, and this went wrong, and that went wrong, and something else went wrong, and actually didn't even get to go, even though I paid for it. So in 2016, signed up again, and a few other things happened. Some of you know my story about 2016 not being my best year about anything. So didn't work out, didn't really prepare that time. And so we did the first one in May, and it went okay. It was me and Doug and Marty, and I toughed through it. I was not prepped for it, I hadn't really worked out for it, but I toughed it out. The one in September, having learned my lesson, I did absolutely nothing to prepare for it. And went even worser, you know? So after the surgery, you know, I tore my bicep, you know, halfway through it, tore my bicep, fell into a pond, and had to finish the race with my arm like this. And it was brutal. But when challenges, you can't get in shape when the challenge happens. You can't expect to be able to tough it through if you're not doing anything to get yourself in shape ahead of time. You're getting the parable here. We're switching to Bible study and worship and, you know, and as men of God. So that's what it is. I'll be honest. Do you know the #1 reason why I try to do devotions and read my Bible regularly and pray often? It's because I'm supposed to, because I'm Christian. So I try to do it regularly. You can tell how much enthusiasm that generates. But one of the things Fred said was that the reason we study the Bible is to have a deeper relationship with God. Yeah. When something happens, having memorized verses is fantastic. It does. It gives you a weapon to fight against hard times. But when you're in study, when you're in regular devotions, when you're in regular fellowship with men of God, talking about things of God, when those hard times happen, and I'm not saying if, because I can assure you, when they happen, if they've happened in the past, when they happen again, you're not in shape if you're trying to tough it out there. I mean, the second one, I mean, yeah, nobody would look at me and say, well, this guy's really, really, you know, has let himself go. I get that. But I'm not healthy. Not as healthy physically as I would like to be, and I'm not doing anything about it. So shocking, I'm not getting better. But it's the same thing spiritually. If you're not prepping ahead of time, you cannot tough it through on your own. You cannot tough it through on something you did or knew or read 2 years ago. So it's got to be constant. If you guys want to be in shape physically, it's got to be regular. If you guys want to be walking as men of God, it's got to be regular. That's what we need. That's what we need from each other. It's a lot easier to work out when you've got a workout buddy. You know, okay, I don't want to go running, but I told this guy I was going to go running, and if I don't show up and he does, then, you know, I lose. So that's why we ask you guys to ask each other the questions, to talk to each other. How's the walk? How's the family? How's the struggle? How you doing? And these are great. I mean, these are amazing. I get so much out of being with you guys at this one, the second breakfast. There's some great sharing that goes on there. It's amazing. But twice a month, if you only eat twice a month, you know, you're going to run down pretty quick. So if you're going to feed yourself regularly, you should be feeding yourself regularly. So we need each other. We really do. It's how we keep ourselves armed. It's how we keep ourselves protected. Actually, I was reading recently about the whole parable about the cord of 3 strands, not easily broken. Turns out that is not about weddings. Apparently it's used all the time in weddings, but it's the way it's originally written is about no guy can stand alone. He has to have other guys with them, and 3 guys bound together cannot be overtaken. The enemy cannot defeat them. We had a thing years ago at a men's advance where we did paintball. And me and Steve Znamorowski round up kind of back to back against a shelter. And so I saw over here the enemy, which was Ty and Dwayne and Zach. So all I knew was, I've got to watch them, because I didn't have to turn around and see if anyone was coming up behind me, because Steve Znamorowski was literally back to back with me, and I took the whole rat's nest out. You're welcome, Dwayne. But the only reason I could do that is I knew someone had my back. I knew someone was watching behind me to protect me, and he knew I was backing him up. We depended on each other. And I've remembered that one because it's just a physical example of a spiritual truth. We need to be backing each other up. We need to know there's somebody behind me. So I just hope we keep trying to do it as regularly as we can. We all need it. So let's just pray real quick, and then we'll get to the real talker today. So, dear Lord, we just ask you to keep us aware of our need for you. We are hungry for your word. We are empty without your spirit, Lord. So we ask you to remind us, to encourage us, to challenge us with each other, to walk in your ways and walk together as men of God. And bless Doug and the word he is bringing, which we know comes from you, Lord. Let your spirit flow through him to bless us all. So for your sermon listening pleasure, we have the pastoral stylings of Doug Lattery.
Like magic, I'm up here suddenly. Everyone closes their eyes. Yeah, I'm like on my 3rd cup of coffee, so I'm trying to keep trying to tell myself to slow down. Because last time, I think I planned for like 20 minutes, and I think I got through in about 10. So, all right, here we go. Only grant me these 2 things, God, and then I will not hide from you. Withdraw your hand far from me, and stop frightening me with your terrors. You don't see this type of verse put in fancy lettering and placed on a nice landscape picture with, like, I don't know, a waterfall in a valley, do you? nobody would take that and put it up at their cube at work. Okay, maybe somebody doing it as a joke. Here's what is known as a psalm of lament, and this is even a famous one. Psalm 22, for the director of music, to the tune of the doe of the morning, a psalm of David. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me? So far from my cries of anguish. My God, I cry out by day, but you do not answer. By night, but I find no rest. Yet you are enthroned as the Holy One. You are the one Israel praises. In you, our ancestors put their trust. They trusted and you delivered them. To you they cried out and were saved. In you they trusted and were not put to shame. But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by everyone, despised by the people. All who see me mock me. They hurl insults, shaking their heads. He trusts in the Lord, they say. Let the Lord rescue him. Let him deliver him, since he delights in him. Yet you brought me out of the womb. You made me trust in you, even at my mother's breast. From birth I was cast on you. From my mother's womb you have been my God. Do not be far from me, for trouble is near, and there is no one to help. And it goes on quite a while like that. So what is a psalm of lament? I found this great definition. The function of a lament is to provide a structure for crisis, hurt, grief, or despair. To move a worshiper from hurt to joy, from darkness to light, from desperation to hope. The theological significance of a lament is that it expresses a trust in God in the absence of any evidence that he is active in the world. And I'm going to say that again because it's really easy to just tune me out now. The theological significance of a lament is that it expresses a trust in God in the absence of any evidence that he is active in the world. Through a sequential and deliberate structure, the lament moves from articulation of the emotion of the crisis to petition for God to intervene, to an affirmation of trust in God, even though there has been no immediate deliverance from the crisis. And there's a few types of lament psalms. There's community, where the whole group is coming together, individual, which is obvious, penitential, I always pronounce that wrong, and imprecatory. The imprecatory psalms, or cursing psalms, are a much more radical version of the lament. In this handful of psalms, there are curses pronounced on those who have caused the crisis. Sometimes these are people within the community who have committed injustice, and sometimes people outside who, like the Babylonians, have invaded the country and brought destruction on the nations. While these psalms are not positive and pious, like all laments, they are honest expressions of pain in the face of grief. We should not attempt to Christianize these psalms by pretending they are something that they are not. Yet neither can we exclude them as sub-Christian. Rather, we need to take them seriously as a valid biblical response to God in prayer from the depths of our humanity. Since we accept these psalms as scripture for the church, we need to allow them to inform our theology rather than using our theology to change the psalms. 68 out of 150 of the psalms are laments. That's roughly 45% of the psalms, almost half. I'm going to take a wild guess and say that that percentage is much lower for the songs we typically sing in church. That makes sense. Our culture thrives on positivity. Marketing makes sure to hammer these points home. Everybody wants to be happy. And to show sadness, doubt, loneliness, that can be shown as a sign of weakness. It can mean that our lives aren't perfect like we want them to be. It can mean that we have to face the fact that life isn't always going in the direction that we want to. It could mean that the Vikings could get to the playoffs and choke at the game that would get us into the Super Bowl in our hometown, making history. I mean, it wasn't even close. Seriously, why do we avoid talking about these difficult topics? I'm guessing that most of you here have read the New Testament. Yeah. Probably several times over. But unless you're going through a one-year Bible plan, when's the last time you purposely read it? Man, I'm going to get through this. When was the last time you purposely read Lamentations? Here's just a part of chapter 1. The Lord is righteous, yet I rebelled against his command. Listen, all you peoples. Look on my suffering. My young men and young women have gone into exile. I called to my allies, but they betrayed me. My priests and my elders perished in the city, while they searched for food to keep themselves alive. See, Lord, how distressed I am. I am in torment within, and in my heart I am disturbed, for I have been most rebellious. Outside the sword bereaves, inside there is only death. People have heard my groaning, but there is no one to comfort me. All my enemies have heard of my distress. They rejoice at what you have done. May you bring the day you have announced that they may become like me. Let all their wickedness come before you. Deal with them as you have dealt with me because of all my sins. My groans are many, and my heart is faint. How about reading from Ecclesiastes, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Micah, Nahum, Theoden, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, or Job? And no, those aren't Lord of the Rings characters. Well, actually, one of them was. Let's just see if you're paying attention. It was Theoden. That's not what it's about. Anyway, I personally typically default to something more happy and hopeful, like the Gospels, like everyone else does. So, Doug, what's the point? Why bring this up? Well, I'm glad you asked. Because these darker books, these more honest books, they're in the Bible for a reason. We are human. And life can be great, joyful, amazing, breathtaking, astounding, extraordinary, marvelous, miraculous, spectacular, wonderful, and all the other words I can find in the thesaurus. Thesaurus. It can also be devastating, horrible, lonely, bitter, unfair, destructive, disastrous, overwhelming. These books show a complete picture of life. Not just the joys, but the sorrows as well. A singer that I like, his name is Mark Solomon, he wrote these lyrics that always stuck out to me. Our walk's a narrow road, and there's a whole lot more to go. Hope yours is filled with sunshine, but right now that's not my world. It's not my place, and that's all right. Abundant life, to many, joy is to survive. Joy is to survive. We need to know that things aren't always going to go our way. Some days, weeks, months, years, we're just trying to survive. And that's normal. And the Bible confirms it. This passage from How to Read the Bible for All It's Worth said it better than I could ever hope to. The Psalms, like no other literature, lift us to a position where we can commune with God, capturing a sense of the greatness of his kingdom and a sense of what living with our Heavenly Father for eternity will be like. Even in our darkest moments, when life has become so painful as to seem unendurable, God is with us. Out of the depths, we wait and watch for the Lord's deliverance, knowing we can trust God in spite of our feelings. To cry to God for help is not a judgment on God's faithfulness, but an affirmation of it. But as a caution, the Psalms do not guarantee a pleasant life. It is a misunderstanding, an over-literalization of the language of the Psalms to infer from some of them that God promises to make his believers happy and their lives trouble-free. David, who expresses in the book of Psalms God's blessing in the strongest terms, lived a life that was filled with frequent tragedy and disappointment, as in 1 and 2 Samuel describe. Yet he praises and thanks God enthusiastically at every turn, even in laments, just as Paul advises us to do, even in the midst of hard times. Our Heavenly Father deserves praise for his greatness and goodness in spite of and in the midst of our misery. This life holds no certainty of freedom from distress. I've barely even scratched the surface here. We have so much more we can get into, but I'm going to wrap it up so worship team can come up. We haven't even really talked about Job, but the quote I pulled from there. A man who went through nearly every trial imaginable and then lost everything. If you haven't read his story, it's definitely worth a read. Here's a quote from Job from musician Michael Card. In spite of death, disease, isolation, and ultimately a fear that God had abandoned him, Job simply would not let go of God. When Jesus walked this earth, he felt the brunt of our humanity. Over and over again, we see examples of how he dealt with the harshness of life. John 11:35 is the Bible verse all Sunday school kids love to memorize, right? Somebody out there knows it. Jesus wept. That's the whole verse. In that story, getting back into context, Lazarus, he was a friend of Jesus and he fell ill. Jesus knows that Lazarus is going to die. And then, before they even head out on the road, Lazarus dies. So, when Jesus and his disciples finally arrive, this little scene plays out. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. "Where have you laid him?" he asked. "Come and see, Lord," they replied. And then Jesus wept. Even knowing what was about to happen. Jesus knows what's happening next. He knows he's going to raise Lazarus from the dead in like an hour or whatever, 5 minutes. But he allowed himself to be in the moment with everybody else, to feel the brunt of the sorrow that we feel, to be with them in their grief. And so skip forward to the cross. Jesus is just about dead. What does he say? He quotes a psalm. Was it Psalm 8? Oh Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth." No, that's not what he said. He quotes what I read from before, Psalm 22. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, so far from my cries of anguish? And the Jews of the time knew that. With that one little quote, they knew the rest. Jesus knows what this world is like. He's done it. He's been here. He's got the souvenir t-shirt. I'm pointing at your Super Bowl shirt. Praising God in the midst of difficulty is so powerful because God stands in a moment with us. I saw this great quote again about the lamentation in Psalms. If you are in mourning, you have the opportunity to worship in the most powerful way possible, lamentation. This worship isn't done in order to have God remove the pain. It simply recognizes that God stands in the moment with us. Lamentation elevates God in the presence of our enemies. It brings out a side of God that other forms of worship simply cannot touch. I'm guessing some of you, maybe all of you, are struggling with something right now. Going through pain, emotionally, physically. Maybe you feel like you're in a wilderness time. Just a fancy Christianese ways of saying that you feel like you're far away from God. Know that you're not alone. Since the ancient times, other humans have felt the same way. People here in this room right now feel the same way. So let's just take a moment and be silent as Andy and Doug play. You don't have to say anything, just sit here with God for a moment.
I know we want to move into worship, but I think we need to chew on Doug's word for a minute. Amazing. Doug. What a great word. What a, a deep recognition.